Get your black ass out of my showroom.
I can fix that Bentley for $5.
$5?
Thornton laughed, turned to the crowd.
You hear this? A cockroach crawled in and thinks he can do for $5 what costs 200 grand.
Yes, sir. $5 for the part.
Security.
Let me look at the engine. 2 minutes.
You don't get 2 seconds. Crawl back to the sewer before I have them drag you out.
Some smirked, some looked away. Not one person said a word.
Before I have them drag you out. Let me prove you wrong.
Thornton had no idea how much those $5 were about to cost him. The marble floors of Thornton Luxury Motors gleamed under crystal chandeliers that Saturday morning. The showroom smelled of Italian leather and sandalwood cologne, the kind of place where even the air felt expensive. Greg Thornton owned every square inch of it. 55 years old, thick around the middle, his belly pressing against a 3-piece charcoal suit tailored to hide what it couldn't flatten. Silver hair slicked back with gel, catching the chandelier light. A crimson pocket square peeked from his breast pocket. A Rolex Submariner glinted on his left wrist every time he gestured, which was often. His Oxford shoes, polished to a mirror finish, clicked against the marble as he paced. His hands were soft, nails trimmed and buffed. These were hands that had never touched an engine, never felt the bite of a wrench, never carried the permanent stain of motor oil. Those hands now pointed toward the center of the showroom floor, where a 1962 Bentley Continental GT sat dead. $2.3 million of British engineering frozen in place. The hood was up. The engine bay gaped open, exposing a maze of chrome and steel that 3 senior technicians had already surrendered to. Warren Caldwell stood beside it. The billionaire real estate developer had driven this car across 4 different dealerships in 2 states. Each one had poked around, run diagnostics, scratched their heads, and handed him the same answer: unfixable without a full transmission rebuild.
Mr. Caldwell,
Thornton said, straightening his pocket square, I'll be straight with you. The transmission needs a complete replacement. $200,000 minimum. Parts shipped from Birmingham, England. 3 months lead time. Caldwell's jaw tightened. He ran his palm along the Bentley's fender the way a man touches something he's afraid of losing.
this was my father's car.
He said quietly. He drove it to my college graduation. He drove it to my wedding. He drove it the last Sunday before he died. Thornton nodded, the practiced nod of a man calculating profit margins behind sympathetic eyes. We'll take excellent care of her, he said. Around them, 4 technicians in pressed uniforms murmured agreement. Full diagnostics had been run. The computer said transmission failure. The computer was never wrong. Caldwell looked at the Bentley one more time, the car that carried every memory worth keeping. 200,000, he repeated. At minimum, Thornton confirmed. The showroom hummed with the quiet confidence of men who believed expensive equipment and crisp uniforms made them right. No one questioned the diagnosis. No one offered an alternative. That was when the front door opened. A thin figure stepped inside. White t-shirt yellowed with age, spotted with grease stains that no washing would lift. Faded jeans, threadbare at the knees. Sneakers held together with twisted wire. A wooden toolbox, scratched, dented, older than the boy carrying it. His eyes moved across the exposed engine bay the way a pianist's fingers move before touching the keys. Reading, mapping, already solving. His lips moved. No sound came out. But if anyone had been close enough to read them, they'd have caught 2 words. $5. The door hadn't even closed behind him before the laughter started. Carter Underwood stepped onto the marble floor and the showroom shifted. Not physically, but the air changed, like a stain spreading across white silk. Every eye turned. Every conversation stopped. 19 years old, dark skin, thin frame but wiry, the kind of lean that comes from skipping meals, not from gyms. His hands were the oldest thing about him. Calloused, scarred, grease embedded so deep into the knuckles it had become part of his skin. The hands of a man who'd been working since before he was tall enough to reach an engine block. His white t-shirt had yellowed past saving. A small tear at the right shoulder. Oil spots dotted the fabric like a map of every engine he'd ever opened. His jeans were faded to near white at the knees, the denim so thin you could almost see through it. His sneakers, once white, now gray, were laced with twisted steel wire where the original laces had given up months ago. On his back, a canvas bag. Inside it, a wooden toolbox held together by memory and wood glue. Every tool inside had been handmade or hand-modified. Everyone carried small symbols carved into the handle, letters and numbers in a code only Carter could read. He looked nothing like someone who belonged in this room, and everyone made sure he knew it. "Wrong building, kid," one technician muttered. "Salvation Army's 2 blocks east." Laughter rippled through the showroom. A woman in pearls pulled her handbag closer. Carter walked straight to the Bentley. His wire-laced sneakers squeaked against the marble, the only sound in a room full of people holding their breath to see what would happen next. He stopped 3 feet from the open hood, tilted his head, listened. "I can fix this," he said. Not loud, not soft, just certain. Greg Thornton materialized beside him like a shark sensing blood. The dealer's cologne arrived before he did. Heavy, expensive, suffocating. He towered over Carter by 4 inches and outweighed him by 100 pounds. "You can fix this," Thornton repeated, the way a man repeats a joke before delivering the punchline. "Yes, sir. The transmission isn't the problem." Thornton's smile vanished. The technicians exchanged glances. "I ran a full diagnostic," one of them said, stepping forward. "Clean uniform, soft hands, badge that read, Senior Technician. The system flagged a complete transmission failure. You're saying our equipment is wrong?" "I'm saying your equipment can't hear what I can hear," Carter said. Thornton's face reddened. The Rolex on his wrist glinted as he raised a hand and snapped his fingers. "Kyle, get this kid out of here." Kyle Branton, young, broad-shouldered, Thornton's personal errand boy, grabbed Carter's arm. "Let's go, kid. Show's over." Carter didn't resist. He let himself be pulled toward the door. But he kept his eyes on the Bentley the whole way, reading the engine bay, counting the parts, already solving. He was 3 steps from the exit when a voice stopped everything. "Wait!" Warren Caldwell. The billionaire had been watching from beside the Bentley, arms crossed, face unreadable. He'd seen 4 dealerships fail. He'd heard 100 confident diagnoses. He'd written checks that bought nothing but excuses. But he'd never seen anyone look at his father's car the way this boy just did. "Let go of him," Caldwell said. Kyle looked at Thornton. Thornton's jaw clenched. But he nodded. One sharp jerk of the head. You don't argue with the man writing the check. Kyle released Carter's arm. Caldwell stepped forward. He looked at Carter. Really looked at him. Past the torn shirt, past the wire laces, past everything the room had already decided about him. "Why $5? Caldwell asked. Carter reached into his canvas bag and pulled out the wooden toolbox. He opened it on the marble floor. Inside, hand-bent wrenches, a screwdriver with a custom tip, an improvised stethoscope made from copper tubing and a rubber disc. Each tool had small symbols carved into the handle. "There's a pressure relief valve behind the secondary oil pump," Carter said. "It's stuck. A piece of old gasket broke off and jammed it. Your transmission is fine. You just need a new gasket seal." He looked up at Caldwell. $4.75 at any parts store in town." The showroom was silent. Thornton's face was the color of his pocket square. Carter hadn't always been the boy with wire laces and a wooden toolbox. There was a time when he was just a kid sitting on an overturned milk crate, watching the smartest man he'd ever known bring dead machines back to life. Earl Underwood's garage sat at the end of Maple Street in Ridgewood, a neighborhood the city had forgotten about 3 decades ago. The building was small, cinder block walls, a corrugated tin roof that leaked in 4 places when it rained, a hand-painted sign above the door that read Earls in faded blue letters. No last name, no phone number. Everyone who needed Earl already knew where to find him. The garage smelled like motor oil and coffee, and the peppermint candies Earl kept in his front pocket. It was the kind of smell that became a feeling, warm, safe, permanent. Carter could close his eyes 20 years from now and still smell it. Earl was a big man. Wide shoulders, thick forearms, hands like baseball mitts. But gentle. The kind of gentle that comes from knowing exactly how strong you are and choosing not to use it. He wore the same thing every day: gray work pants, a white undershirt, and a pair of steel-toed boots that he'd resoled 11 times rather than replace. He could fix anything: lawnmowers, washing machines, the '78 Cadillac DeVille that Reverend Collins drove to church every Sunday, the diesel generator that powered the community center during the blackout of 2019, a neighbor's hearing aid, a child's bicycle chain. If it had moving parts, Earl could listen to it, understand it, and heal it. He started teaching Carter at 7. Not with textbooks, not with manuals, with his hands, with silence, with patience that most men don't have the strength to carry.
Put your hand here,
Earl would say, pressing Carter's small palm against a warm engine block. Feel that? That little shake? That's the third cylinder misfiring. She's trying to tell you something. You just gotta be quiet enough to listen. Carter listened. For 12 years he listened.
He learned that every engine has a voice.
That a healthy motor hums in a rhythm as steady as a heartbeat. That when something breaks, the rhythm changes. A skip, a stutter, a whisper where there should be a roar. Earl taught him to hear the difference between a rod knock and a valve tick from 15 feet away. Taught him to feel the difference between a warped head gasket and a cracked block just by laying his palm flat against the metal. Taught him to build tools when he couldn't afford to buy them. Copper tubing bent into stethoscopes, screwdrivers ground down to custom tips, wrenches shaped to reach places no factory tool could reach. Every tool Earl made, he carved a small symbol into the handle. A code. His own language of marks that told him which engine the tool was built for, what year, what problem it solved. Carter memorized every symbol, every mark, every story behind every scratch on every handle. By the time he was 12, his hands were already calloused. By 14, neighbors started bringing their cars to him when Earl's arthritis flared up. By 16, Carter could diagnose an engine by sound alone faster than most mechanics could with a computer. Earl watched him grow. Watched the boy's fingers develop the same instinct his own had carried for 50 years. And on quiet evenings, after the last car was done and the coffee had gone cold, Earl would sit on his stool and look at Carter with something he never said out loud: pride. Then Earl got sick. It started with the cough, then the weight loss, then the mornings when his hands shook too much to hold a wrench. Pancreatic cancer. The doctor gave him 4 months. Earl lasted 6, because Earl Underwood did everything on his own terms, including dying. The last thing he said to Carter was in the garage. The machines were quiet. The coffee was cold. Earl sat on his stool, the wooden toolbox on his lap.
"This is yours now,"
he said. He tapped the lid with one trembling finger. "Everything I know is in this box, not in the tools, in what they taught your hands to feel." He died 3 days later. Carter was 17. The garage closed. The hand-painted sign faded in the rain. The neighborhood moved on the way neighborhoods do, slowly, quietly, without ceremony. But Carter kept the toolbox. He kept it under his bed. He kept it clean. He kept every tool oiled, every symbol visible, every lesson alive. And 2 years later, sitting in his room at midnight, scrolling through his phone, he saw a video. A shaky clip from somebody's Instagram story. A showroom. A Bentley with its hood up. A fat man in a suit telling a billionaire it would cost $200,000. Carter watched the clip 3 times. He didn't need a fourth. He heard it. Through the phone speaker, through the background noise, through the terrible microphone quality, he heard the faint, rhythmic click of a stuck pressure relief valve. He reached under his bed, pulled out the toolbox. "I hear you," he whispered. The next morning, Carter rode his bicycle back to Thornton Luxury Motors. Same rusted frame, same welded joints, same wire-laced sneakers pushing the pedals. The wooden toolbox sat in the canvas bag on his back, bumping against his spine with every pothole. The showroom was different on Sunday. More people. Word had spread, not through any official channel, but through the quiet electric current of gossip that runs through small towns faster than broadband. The kid who said $5. The black boy who walked into the most expensive dealership in the county and told them they were all wrong. People came to see if he'd actually show up. He showed up. Carter leaned his bicycle against the hedge outside and walked through the front door. The marble floor announced him again. Squeak, squeak, squeak. Wire against polished stone. Thornton was waiting, arms folded across his charcoal suit. Kyle Branton flanked him like a bulldog on a short leash. 2 security guards stood by the door. This time, Thornton was ready. "I thought I made myself clear yesterday," Thornton said. "You did," Carter said. "I came back anyway." Caldwell's voice cut through the tension from across the showroom. "Mr. Thornton, it's my car." The billionaire walked toward them. He wore a simple navy blazer. No flash, no Rolex, no pocket square. Just a man who'd built his fortune by recognizing value where others saw none. "I've spent 4 months and $80,000 on diagnostics," Caldwell said. "Every expert tells me a different version of the same answer. Transmission rebuild, minimum 200,000, wait 3 months. He looked at Carter. "This young man says he can do it for $5. In 2 hours. "Mr. Caldwell, with all due respect," Thornton began. "I wasn't finished." Caldwell's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "I've listened to men in expensive suits tell me what they can't do. I'd like to hear what this kid thinks he can." Thornton's neck flushed red above his collar. "Fine," he said, the word coming out like a blade, "but on my terms." He turned to Carter, looked him up and down. Torn shirt, oil stains, wire laces. The full inventory of everything Thornton believed made a person worthless. 2 hours, Thornton said, not a minute more. You don't touch any of my equipment. You don't use my lift. You don't use my tools. Whatever you've got in that little wooden toy box of yours, that's all you get. That's all I need, Carter said. And if you make it worse... Thornton leaned in close enough that Carter could smell the sandalwood. You pay for the damage. Every cent. I don't care if it takes you the rest of your life. Carter met his eyes. And if I fix it? Caldwell answered before Thornton could. $10,000. Cash. From me. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Carter shook his head. I don't want $10,000, sir. Caldwell raised an eyebrow. Then what do you want? Carter paused. He thought about the garage on Maple Street, the faded sign, the stool where his grandfather sat, the smell of oil and peppermint that was slowly fading from the walls. I want him to admit he was wrong, Carter said. He looked at Thornton. Out loud, in front of everyone. The crowd went still. Thornton's lip curled. Deal. He said it fast, too fast, the way a man agrees to something he's certain will never happen. Clock starts now, Thornton said, tapping his Rolex with one manicured finger. Kyle, get me a chair. I want to enjoy this. A folding chair appeared. Thornton sat down, crossed his legs, and settled in to watch the boy fail. Nora Whitfield pushed through the crowd. Mid-30s, sharp eyes, a local news reporter who'd been chasing stories in small-town dealerships for 6 years without finding one worth telling. She held up her phone and hit record. For the record, she said to no one in particular, I'm filming everything. Carter knelt on the marble floor. He unzipped the canvas bag, lifted out the wooden toolbox and set it down carefully, the way you set down something sacred. He opened the lid. Inside, arranged with surgical precision, lay Earl Underwood's tools, hand-bent wrenches with custom angles, a screwdriver with a tip ground to a shape no factory had ever produced, the copper tube stethoscope with its rubber listening disc, a set of gasket scrapers made from old butter knives, socket extensions carved from hardwood. Every handle had symbols, Earl's code, Carter's inheritance. Beside them, in a small plastic bag, sat a single rubber gasket seal, $4.75. Carter laid the tools out on the marble floor, each one placed with the careful reverence of a surgeon preparing instruments. The crude, handmade metal looked almost absurd against the polished stone next to the dealership's million-dollar diagnostic rig gleaming under the chandeliers. He looked up at the Bentley. Okay, old girl, he said quietly. Let's have a conversation. The clock started. Carter slid under the Bentley on his back, the marble floor cold through his thin t-shirt. He didn't ask for a creeper. He didn't need one. Above him, 50 people pressed closer. Phones were out. Nora Whitfield held her camera steady. Thornton sat in his folding chair, legs crossed, smirking like a man watching the opening act of a comedy show. Carter closed his eyes. He placed both palms flat against the undercarriage, spread his fingers wide, felt the cold metal against his calloused skin, and waited. Not for something to happen, for something to speak. Earl had taught him this. The first lesson, the most important one. Before you diagnose, you listen. Before you listen, you feel. An engine is a living thing. It breathes, it pulses, it complains. And if you're patient enough, truly patient, the kind of patient that most mechanics never learn to be, it will tell you exactly what's wrong. Carter's breathing slowed. The showroom noise faded. The whispers, the shuffling feet, the quiet hum of the air conditioning, all of it dropped away. There was only the machine. He reached for the copper tube stethoscope, pressed the rubber disc against the transmission housing, moved it slowly, inch by inch, listening the way a doctor listens to a chest. Not for what's there, but for what shouldn't be. The transmission sounded healthy. Strong gear engagement, clean fluid flow. No grinding, no whine, no metallic scraping. The computer diagnostic had been wrong. Not because the computer was broken, but because it was looking in the wrong place. Carter moved the stethoscope further back, past the transmission, past the drive shaft coupling, into the secondary oil circuit, the maze of small valves and channels that most diagnostic systems don't even map. There, a click, tiny, rhythmic, once every 4 seconds, like a fingernail tapping against a tin can. So faint that no microphone, no sensor, no electronic diagnostic system in the world would pick it up. But Carter's ears had been trained by Earl Underwood. And Earl Underwood could hear a spark plug gap 1/1000th of an inch too wide from across a garage. Carter slid out from under the car. His t-shirt was now streaked with fresh grease. He sat up on the marble floor and looked at the crowd. "Start the engine," he said. Caldwell raised an eyebrow. "You sure?" "Yes, sir. Start it and leave it running." Caldwell sat in the driver's seat and turned the key. The Bentley coughed to life. The engine rumbled, rough, uneven, like a man breathing with one collapsed lung. Carter stood up. He walked to the open engine bay and placed his right hand flat against the block. His left hand went to a spot just behind the oil filter housing, a place so deep in the engine compartment that his arm disappeared up to the elbow. "There," he said. "Feel that?" He grabbed Caldwell's hand and placed it on the same spot. Caldwell frowned. Then his eyes widened. "It's ticking," Caldwell said. "That's your pressure relief valve," Carter said. "It controls oil flow to the secondary circuit. When it opens and closes properly, you don't feel anything. When it sticks," he tapped the spot with his finger, "you get that tick. And when it sticks long enough, oil pressure drops in the secondary circuit, which makes the transmission control module think the transmission itself is failing." He looked at the 4 technicians in their pressed uniforms. They stared at him. "Your diagnostic computer flagged a transmission failure because it read low pressure in the transmission circuit. But the transmission is fine. The pressure is low because this valve is jammed. And it's jammed because a piece of old gasket material broke off and wedged itself between the valve seat and the spring." One of the technicians, the senior one, badge gleaming, stepped forward. His face was tight. "That valve isn't even in the diagnostic tree," he said. "The system doesn't monitor it." "I know," Carter said. "That's why I didn't use your system." Silence. The kind of silence that fills a room when something shifts. When the people who were laughing realized they might be wrong, and the person they laughed at might be right. Thornton uncrossed his legs. His smirk was gone. "This is ridiculous," he said, but his voice had lost its edge. "You're telling me a 19-year-old kid heard something that a $200,000 diagnostic system couldn't detect?" Carter looked at him. "No, sir. I'm telling you my grandfather heard it. He just taught me how to listen." He reached into the wooden toolbox, pulled out the small plastic bag with the gasket seal inside. "This is a standard pressure relief valve gasket, compatible with the 1962 Continental GT secondary oil circuit. I bought it yesterday at Patterson's Auto Parts on 5th Street. He held it up to the light. A small rubber ring. Nothing special to look at, nothing impressive. Nothing that would make anyone in this room think it was worth anything at all. $4.75, Carter said. Receipt's in my pocket if you want to see it. Nora Whitfield zoomed her camera in on the gasket, then on Carter's face, then on Thornton's. The dealer's expression had changed. The smirk was gone. The confidence was gone. What remained was something Carter recognized. The look of a man who has just realized the ground beneath his feet isn't as solid as he thought. Carter went to work.
He started with the air intake.
Disconnected it with 3 precise turns of a hand-bent wrench, one of Earl's specials, shaped to reach a mounting bolt that no standard tool could access. Then the secondary oil lines, 2 clamps, a drain catch improvised from a plastic bag, and a gentle twist that came from years of practice, not from any manual. His hands moved with a rhythm, not fast, deliberate. Every motion had a purpose, no wasted energy, no hesitation, the way a surgeon works, the way a musician plays, the way a man moves when he has done something 10,000 times and his body knows it better than his mind. The crowd grew. People drifted in from the parking lot. Phones multiplied. Someone started a live stream. Nora Whitfield narrated quietly into her camera, her voice barely above a whisper, like a nature documentarian watching something rare in the wild. Thornton watched from his folding chair for 15 minutes. Then he stood up, straightened his pocket square, walked to his office without a word. The glass door closed behind him. Through the window, Carter could see him making a phone call. Thornton's free hand was clenched into a fist. 20 minutes in, Carter had the secondary oil housing exposed. The valve was close now, buried behind a cluster of lines and fittings that required removing in a specific sequence. One wrong order and you'd crack a fitting. One cracked fitting and the repair bill would jump from $5 to $5,000. Carter knew the sequence. Earl had made him practice it on a junkyard engine block until he could do it blindfolded. He reached for his gasket scraper, the one Earl had made from an old butter knife, ground down to a perfect edge. It wasn't on the tray. Carter paused. He looked at his tools laid out on the marble floor. Everything was in its place, except the scraper, and the small socket extension, and the copper stethoscope. They'd been moved. He looked up. Kyle Branton was leaning against a pillar 10 feet away, arms crossed, face blank. Too blank. The kind of blank that's trying very hard not to look guilty. Carter said nothing. He scanned the floor, found the scraper under the front tire. It had been kicked there. The socket extension was behind the rear wheel. The stethoscope was 5 feet to the left near a trash can. He picked them up, wiped them off, put them back in order. No accusation, no complaint, no reaction at all. He went back to work. 35 minutes in, Carter was deep inside the engine bay, both arms buried up to the elbows, fingers working by touch alone. He loosened the final fitting that held the valve housing in place. Then he felt it. Something was wrong. A bolt that should have been hand-tight was completely loose. Not stripped, removed. Someone had taken it out while Carter was retrieving his scattered tools. Without that bolt, pulling the valve housing would crack the oil pump bracket. The repair would fail. The engine would be damaged, and Carter would owe Thornton for the destruction. Carter's heart rate climbed. He could feel his pulse in his fingertips, pressed against cold metal in the belly of a $2 million machine. He breathed, slow, the way Earl taught him. When something goes wrong, Earl used to say, don't panic, don't rush, just be still. The answer is always closer than you think. Carter reached into the wooden toolbox, bottom compartment, the one he never opened because he never needed to. Earl's emergency stash, a small cloth roll containing 6 bolts, 4 washers, 2 gasket scraps, and a note in Earl's handwriting that said, "Always carry spares, baby boy." Carter's eyes burned. He blinked it away. He found the right bolt, threaded it in, finger tight, then a quarter turn with the wrench. Perfect. Behind him, through the glass office door, Thornton was watching. His phone call was over. His face was still. But Caldwell was watching too, and Caldwell had been watching the security camera feed on the showroom monitor. He'd seen Kyle walk to the engine while Carter bent down to pick up his kicked tools. He'd seen Kyle's hand reach in. He'd seen the bolt come out. Caldwell said nothing. Not yet. He folded his arms and waited. Carter didn't know any of this. He only knew that someone wanted him to fail. and that his grandfather had prepared him for exactly this moment. He went back to work. 45 minutes on the clock. The valve housing was almost free. The crowd had gone quiet. No more laughing, no more smirking. Something had shifted in the room. The slow, wordless recognition that they might be witnessing something real. Carter's hands moved, steady, certain, calloused fingers against British steel. He wasn't shaking anymore. 1 hour and 12 minutes on the clock. Carter's fingers found the valve. It was exactly where he said it would be, tucked behind the secondary oil pump, in a cavity so deep and narrow that the dealership's diagnostic cameras couldn't see it and their sensor arrays couldn't reach it. A blind spot in a $2 million machine, hidden from every piece of modern technology in the building, but not hidden from hands that had been trained to feel. Carter pulled the valve assembly out slowly, carefully, the way you remove a splinter from a child's finger. Steady pressure, no sudden movements, infinite patience. He held it up to the light. The crowd pressed forward, phones tilted. Nora Whitfield zoomed in. There it was. A small rubber gasket cracked down the middle, and wedged between the valve seat and the spring, a fragment of old gasket material no bigger than a grain of rice. Black, hardened, invisible to the naked eye unless you knew exactly what you were looking for. This, Carter said, holding the fragment between his thumb and forefinger, is your $200,000 problem. He held it up higher so the cameras could catch it. A grain of rubber. A speck. The thing that had defeated 4 dealerships, 3 senior technicians, a $200,000 diagnostic system, and every expensive suit in the room. Carter set the old valve assembly on the marble floor. He reached into the plastic bag and pulled out the new gasket seal, held them side by side. Old one, cracked. New one, $475. He worked in silence after that, cleaning the valve seat with the butter knife scraper, removing every trace of the old gasket material, scraping slowly, carefully, the way a dentist cleans a tooth. No gouging, no rushing. If even a microscopic piece of the old gasket remained, the valve would stick again in 6 months. Carter scraped until the metal was clean enough to eat off. He inspected the spring. Still good, still strong, just trapped. He flexed it between his fingers, checking the tension, feeling for fatigue. Satisfied, he set it aside. He seated the new gasket with his fingertips, pressing it into place with the kind of precision that no tool can replicate. Only human hands. Only trained human hands. He ran his thumb around the seal 3 times, checking for any gap, any lift, any imperfection. There was none. Then he reassembled. Every bolt torqued by feel, every fitting snug to the exact tension that Earl had taught him. Not too tight, not too loose. Just the point where the metal stops wanting to turn and starts wanting to hold. Carter called it the whisper point, Earl's term. The moment when the machine says enough. The secondary oil lines went back in. Each connection checked twice, once by touch, once by sight. The air intake reconnected, the housing sealed. Carter moved through the reassembly with the same deliberate rhythm he'd used from the start. No rushing, no shortcuts, no celebration before the finish line. 1 hour and 38 minutes. Carter stood up. His t-shirt, once yellowed white, was now almost entirely black with grease and oil. His jeans had dark patches on both knees. His hands were black up to the wrists. A streak of oil ran across his forehead where he'd wiped sweat with the back of his hand. He looked at the engine bay one last time, checked every connection, traced every line with his fingers, nodded once, to himself or maybe to Earl. Then he stepped back. "Try it now," he said. The showroom held its breath. Caldwell walked to the driver's seat. He sat down. His hand rested on the key for a moment. 3 seconds, maybe 4, but they stretched. He looked through the windshield at Carter, this thin, grease-covered 19-year-old standing alone on a marble floor, surrounded by people who had laughed at him, insulted him, tried to sabotage him. Caldwell turned the key. The engine caught on the first try. Not a cough, not a stutter, not the rough, uneven rumble of a sick machine struggling to breathe. A purr. Deep, smooth, rich. The sound of a perfectly balanced 1962 Bentley Continental GT engine running exactly the way its makers intended it to run 60 years ago. Every cylinder firing in sequence, every valve opening and closing in perfect rhythm. The heartbeat steady, strong, alive. The sound filled the showroom. It bounced off the marble floors and the crystal chandeliers and the glass walls. It drowned out the silence. Then the silence broke.
One person clapped.
Then another. Then 10. Then the entire showroom erupted, clapping, shouting, phones in the air, people grabbing each other's arms. A woman in the back row pressed her hand to her mouth. A man who'd been smirking an hour ago was shaking his head, mouth open, saying, "No way!" over and over. A teenage boy near the window pumped his fist like he'd just watched a championship buzzer beater. Nora Whitfield's hands were trembling. She kept the camera steady anyway. She'd been doing local news for 6 years. She knew, right now, right here, she was filming the best story of her career. Carter stood still. He didn't raise his fists. He didn't shout. He didn't look at Thornton. He looked down at the wooden toolbox on the marble floor, at the hand-carved symbols on each handle, at the small, empty space where the gasket scraper sat, returned to its place. His eyes were wet. He wiped them with the back of his greasy hand, leaving a dark streak across his cheek. 1 hour, 47 minutes, Nora said into her camera. $4.75. She turned the lens to Thornton. The dealer stood in the doorway of his glass office. Charcoal suit still perfect, pocket square still crimson, Rolex still catching the light. Every thread in place, every hair in position, not a single stain on his hands. But his face was white. The kind of white that starts at the jaw and crawls up to the eyes. The color of a man watching the foundation crack beneath the building he thought he owned. He said nothing. The crowd didn't need him to. The applause hadn't even faded when Warren Caldwell stepped out of the Bentley. He closed the driver's door carefully, reverently. The engine idled behind him, smooth, quiet, steady. The heartbeat restored. Caldwell walked across the showroom, past the cheering crowd, past Nora Whitfield's camera, past the 4 technicians who suddenly found the floor very interesting. He stopped in front of Greg Thornton. The 2 men stood 3 feet apart. Caldwell in his simple navy blazer, no flash, just authority earned by decades of building things that lasted. Thornton in his charcoal suit, crimson pocket square, Rolex, every piece of armor still in place. But armor doesn't help when the walls are already inside. $200,000, Caldwell said. His voice was calm, the most dangerous kind of calm. That's what you quoted me, for a $5 part.
Thornton opened his mouth.
Nothing came out. I've been patient. 4 dealerships, 80,000 in diagnostics, 3 months of being told my father's car was a lost cause. Caldwell took 1 step closer. But this boy walked in with a wooden toolbox and found the problem in under 2 hours. So either every expert is incompetent or someone has been lying to me. Mr. Caldwell, the diagnostic clearly— I'm not done! Caldwell pointed to the security monitor above the service desk. Your system records continuously. I asked your receptionist to pull up the last hour. Thornton's face went gray. The monitor flickered. The recording started. High definition. Timestamp in the corner. 12:47 p.m. Carter bends down to pick up tools kicked across the floor. Kyle Branton walks behind the Bentley, reaches into the engine bay. His hand goes deep. When it pulls back, something metallic glints between his fingers. The bolt. 12:48 p.m. Kyle drops the bolt into his pocket, walks to his pillar, crosses his arms, blank expression like a mask. 12:32 p.m. Earlier footage. Kyle approaches Carter's tool tray. His foot catches the edge. Tools scatter across marble. Kyle keeps walking. That is not an accident, Caldwell said. I watched your employee sabotage this young man's work, twice, while you made phone calls in your office. Thornton said nothing. The crimson pocket square looked like a wound on his chest. My attorney is reviewing this footage. We'll be filing charges for attempted property damage, fraud, and obstruction. And I suspect other customers will have stories of their own. He was right. A man raised his hand. He told me my BMW needed a new catalytic converter. $12,000. Second opinion. It was a sensor. $90 fix. A woman spoke up. My Mercedes. He said the turbo was shot. $35,000. It was a vacuum line.
Then another voice.
And another. 5 people. Then 8. Then 12. Years of inflated quotes. Years of customers too intimidated by marble floors and charcoal suits to question the man in the Rolex. Nora Whitfield filmed every word. Her live stream had passed 10,000 viewers. Thornton stood perfectly still. The suit that had made him untouchable now made him a target. "We had a deal," Carter said. Everyone turned. Carter stood by the Bentley, greasy hands at his sides, wire-laced sneakers on marble, wooden toolbox at his feet. Everything about him said he didn't belong in this room. Everything he'd just done said otherwise. "You said if I fixed it, you'd admit you were wrong, out loud, in front of everyone." Thornton's jaw worked. His eyes darted to the crowd, to the cameras, to the door. But there was no exit that didn't go through this moment. The word came out like a tooth being pulled. "Wrong." Carter nodded. Once. That was enough. Caldwell pulled out an envelope. $10,000, as promised. Carter looked at it, then at the toolbox. "My grandfather would have said the car was payment enough." "Your grandfather isn't here," Caldwell said gently. "But I think he'd want you to take it, for whatever comes next."
Carter took the envelope.
He didn't count it. He slid it into the canvas bag next to the wooden toolbox and closed the zipper. The crowd was still filming, still clapping, still buzzing with the electric charge of something that would be told and retold for years. But Carter was already somewhere else, standing in a garage on Maple Street, smelling oil and peppermint, hearing his grandfather's voice. "You did good, baby boy." 6 months later, the video had 47 million views. Nora Whitfield's live stream got picked up by every major network within 48 hours. The clip of Carter holding the cracked gasket, "This is your $200,000 problem," became the most shared automotive clip of the year. Hashtag $5 trended for 11 days. Hashtag Justice for Carter trended for 9. Thornton Luxury Motors closed 3 weeks after the video went viral. The state revoked Greg Thornton's dealer license following an investigation that uncovered 14 years of fraud, inflated diagnostics, unnecessary repairs, parts charged but never installed. 23 former customers filed claims. Thornton's charcoal suits went into storage. His Rolex went to an attorney. The marble showroom became a furniture outlet. Carter didn't follow the news. He was too busy. The $10,000 from Caldwell went straight to Maple Street. Carter patched the tin roof, repainted the sign. Same design, same blue letters. Earls. No last name, no phone number. He kept the cinder block walls, kept the oil-stained floor, kept the stool where his grandfather sat with cold coffee and peppermint candies. He added one thing, a framed photo above the workbench. Earl Underwood holding a 7-year-old Carter on his knee, both smiling, both covered in grease. Beneath the photo, a brass plate. "Every engine tells you what's wrong. You just gotta be quiet enough to listen." Earl Underwood. The garage opened on a Saturday. By noon, 4 cars in the lot. By Sunday, 9. Neighbors. Strangers who'd driven 2 hours to meet the kid who'd heard what a $200,000 machine couldn't. Every Saturday afternoon, free repairs for anyone in Ridgewood who couldn't afford one. The line wrapped around the block by the second week. Warren Caldwell showed up one Tuesday. No entourage, no press. He offered Carter a full scholarship to the Reynolds Automotive Institute. Tuition, housing, tools, everything. Carter accepted. One condition. The garage stays open. Every Saturday. Free, no matter what. Caldwell smiled. Deal. On the wall next to the photo, Carter hung the receipt from Patterson's Auto Parts. $4.75. The most expensive lesson Greg Thornton ever learned, and the cheapest repair Carter Underwood ever made. If this story reminded you that talent doesn't come with a price tag, drop a comment. What's something you can do that nobody gives you credit for? Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And if you haven't already, subscribe. Stories like Carter's deserve to be told.